Merci beaucoup. It's really, really nice to be here in Paris, and I have a short story for how I've spent my last couple of days. Can you show the slides? This is at the Media Lab looking over the top of Cambridge, which is nothing like being at the Eiffel Tower looking at the top of Paris. I went to Brancusi's studio outside the Pompidou, and it's interesting to see all the tools he uses. All of these tools that all do slightly subtle, slightly different things. To me, this is a very important picture because it means that the glass slab, the iPhone, and the Android won't be the perfect tool for human creation. We'll have huge diversity and huge complexity and huge variation in the tools that we use. And part of the uses of these will be the Internet of Things. Now, I also went to the Serpette flea market, which you may have been to. And here you see huge diversity, again, of cooking tools and of cooking implements. I have a friend that works at Baccarat, and I spent too much money at Baccarat. But here you also see the huge diversity. Like, there are 6 different subtle differences in sizes of wine glasses for drinking. Like, this is an advanced technology, advanced society. This says a lot about what type of interfaces we want to have with our objects. The Paris Air Show was here this week. You know, no one's going to try to fly this, swiping and clicking and dragging. You need the interface spread thinly around you in order to do a complex task like this plane. So today I want to ask you a question about what do you want in terms of your relationship with technology? What future do you want in terms of this relationship? I have 4 scenarios for you, and you can decide. The first is what I call the terminal world. This is sort of what we saw with what Microsoft imagines when it thinks about the future, which is everything is a glass slab. It may be bigger, it may have more gesture, but ultimately it has the same characteristics as we find today on iThings. And even for this, man of the future going through the airport, the biggest invention that Microsoft can come up with is a slab that unfolds as innovation. And it's not very good.
The exhibit allows visitors to learn about chemistry in a playful, hands-on way without the safety issues.
I won't use the audio on this. So variations of the terminal world are things that have tangible controllers. Some of this work was done at MIT, a museum exhibit that has pucks that are tangible, that sit on top of the surface that you can manipulate and move around. But again, I sort of see this as terminals. It's not doing what the Brancusi tools were able to do for him. Another imagining of the future of technology is one of prosthetics. This is the fantasy that we all want, of being Superman, of being superheroes. I feel like this is a very important interface, especially if you have a terrible hearing deficit and you need a cochlear implant, or if you need to replace your legs, like my colleague Hugh Hare at the Media Lab. He has 2 artificial legs, and these are actuated, and they've completely changed his life as well as his height. But this is the future of putting things on our bodies to make ourselves superhuman. And the big problem with this future is the private view, and the view that each of us will have will be different. You will see one thing, you will see something else. We won't share, we won't have a consensual view of the world. And this is a problem. It's the same isolation as we have today with earbuds, where it takes us apart from each other rather than bringing us closer. The third is one that's a big research topic at the Media Lab of social robots. This is interfaces that are on the way to humanness, which means that the ramifications for human-computer interaction is it will look more like human-to-human interaction because these things will be like humans. Certainly that's the sort of Sony vision of the world, or the Honda vision of the world with Asimo. I sort of think of social robots as the types of interfaces that you have on Downton Abbey, where you have one person for every important aspect of your life. You've got one person to drive you, and one person to cook for you, and one person to take care of your clothing, and one person to teach you a new language, and one person to teach you music, where the intelligence isn't superhuman. It's not you, but it's distributed and disseminated amongst your agents. And one of the features of these agents is that they may be expressive. They may evoke an emotion in you. There's a project at the Media Lab called Kismet, which is specifically designed to evoke emotion in people by having big eyes and eyebrows and to be able to follow your gaze. You look at him, and then I look at, Kismet also looks at him, so that you have this view that he thinks he's understanding, that you think he's understanding you. One of the professors there, Cynthia Brazil, is building a startup right now where she believes that this idea of having a cute object, a teddy bear that's responsive to teach you a language, to take care of yourself in old age, is a much bigger opportunity in terms of an app store than iPads. And the reason is because you will identify with it. You will love it in a way that you never love your iPad. And this is called neoteny, which is to give a technology human-like characteristics and youthful characteristics, so it's cute. One of my colleagues is building a dieting robot that sits in your kitchen and looks at the things you eat and tries to give you advice on being a healthier eater. But I think people will, I think it's a little bit cheesy, but people will respond because there's this object that's cute that you have a relationship with that's watching you. So in a sort of sentinel way, you will respond. Now, I think the reason that this is a dead end, that social robots won't succeed, is because it makes us uncomfortable. The closer we get to human-like representations and actions and conversations, the more that we have what's called category confusion by psychologists, which is we want women and men to look different. Maybe that's why women wear makeup. We don't want to be confused by sort of gender-neutral people. Like it's hard on our brain somehow, or so the argument goes. And this sort of thing, these things that are not quite, that are not human, certainly yet, will be uncomfortable for us. And this is characterized as the uncanny valley, which is the closer you get to being human-like, the more you fall off into the zombie corpse-like valley. Maybe one way past this is to actually put real humans behind these things that have mobility. This is a startup called Double Robotics that has basically a Segway with an iPad on top, and it just drives around the museum, so you don't need the Google Museum project. You can just drive yourself. Plus, you can meet other people, I don't think so. So the last category of future that I want you to consider is the future of what I call enchanted objects. And by enchantment, I do mean magical, but I don't mean deception. I don't mean that this is some sort of like sleight of hand. I mean, or pink unicorns, or Disney princess. But I do mean that you will respond emotionally to these things, and that they will be the thing that they are, yet something else, something augmented. How many people know this Anoto pen? Anybody have one? It's a pen. It works as a pen. It has ink as a pen. It has a little camera also and a microphone in the pen, and you write on a special kind of paper that has essentially a sort of barcoding system on the paper. So the pen knows and can record every gesture and timestamps that with every part of the audio track. So you could go directly back to the lecture just to that point by just tapping on your notes after you've taken notes. So what I like about this is it's a pen, and it's a fine pen. It's not a great pen, but it doesn't ruin its penness to also be augmented with a new capability. Another example of this is sort of the most dirty example that I could think of, besides interactive toilets, but this is a trash can that's making its way around Cambridge and Philadelphia and New York by a startup in Boston called Big Belly. And This trash can has a GPRS modem in it. It also has a solar recharger and a trash compactor. But most importantly, it changes the route that the trash truck drives every day. It does that computer science 101 project of what's the shortest path that the trash truck should drive right now to pick up only those big belly trash cans that are full. So it's a lot less driving around for the trash truck and a lot cleaner in terms of the city. Another example is of some wallets that we did for a financial institution for Bank of Boston at the Media Lab. They're one of our sponsors. And they said, one of the problems with plastic, with paying for everything with plastic, is you don't feel it. You don't feel it when you're getting to the end of your budget. You don't feel it when you get a paycheck from work. We used to feel it. You used to feel the cash in a roll or in our pockets. So we made 3 wallets that all are tangible interfaces. I would say these are enchanted objects. One actually has a little bladder in it that gets bigger, that puffs up when you get your paycheck. So now you feel the cash. Another one has a hinge, and as you're almost at your spending limit for the month, it's harder to open. So it's harder to open the wallet. So you sort of feel how close you are. This is a project that I've been working on over the last couple of months called Ambient furniture. And this idea is to take the IKEA catalog of furniture and to try to think about what are those services, those apps that you could put on furniture or in furniture that would make it enchanted. So this one is the main themes of this are glanceability, incidental interfaces that just sort of happen to be there. The first project is a cabinet that connects grandkids to grands. So the idea is you put it at the height of the grandkids, and then the other side glows when they're around. And so your grandparents who are technology challenged can talk to the grandkids who want to talk frequently and easily. Let me turn up the sound and I'll play the last couple. It intrusively listens to the conversation and displays photos of people and places from your Facebook feed. So it's as the conversation changes, so do the photos. It's a casual way to enhance the conversation. Or take the energy clock. It shows you how your current energy usage compares with your past. A green wedge appears next to the hour hand when you conserve more energy than usual, and it's red if you're being a hog. We all need moments of relaxation to recharge throughout the day. With the Pandora chair, we'll cue the music, you just enjoy. The chair tunes into your favorite Pandora stations and plays different songs depending upon your level of incline. Sitting upright, the pace quickens. Leaning back, you'll just enjoy something more peaceful. The Google Latitude doorbell helps your family deal with the end-of-day chaos. It announces via a subtle chime that your spouse or children are on their way home. Each person in the house has their own chime. Lastly is the Amazon trash can. Just lift the lid, pause to scan, and then toss. The item is automatically reordered from Amazon. It's the future of easy grocery shopping. We are looking for your feedback on these. Okay, so the job for this room, the job for you, is to think about, given the fact that you have wireless networks, you have sensors, you have all of this stuff that's rapidly approaching zero cost, what should you enchant? There are many, many products out there, and how do you know where to start? Do you start with instruments or medication or shoes, magic shoes, or architecture or street furniture? So I want to present a little bit of a framework to think about how to prioritize maybe some of your inventions going forward. And I'm really inspired by images like this because they sort of give you this sense of the hopefulness for the history of the future. This is when highways were much smoother and people would dream about turning around in the car and playing, Scrabble or something as you're driving. And it certainly anticipates a type of future that we wanted maybe in the 50s and maybe we still crave today. So I think that a lot of the insights or the inspiration for what to build sort of come from your childhood and come from thinking about what are the stories and what are the magical objects in those stories, from the Brothers Grimm to James Bond to Harry Potter. And I want to show you some examples from fiction and then some responses to those by inventors for each of the fictional examples. And many of these, I was inspired by Frodo, who had a sword that had a special capability. Does anybody remember what Frodo's sword did? It turns blue, right. It glows blue when you need to use it. So it has a location-based service, which is about knowing whether orcs are nearby. And if orcs are nearby, that it anticipates its own use, which seems pretty cool. So we did an umbrella about 10 years ago at this company, Ambient Devices, which I founded. And we used a wireless network. It was an old pager network, and we embedded a pager chip, which is a very cheap, $1 or $2 chipset. And so blue LEDs sort of glow blue and have a sprinkling pattern when you need to remember your umbrella for that day. So I want to organize this part of my talk into six examples. One is, and I think all of these are fantasies that you find in fiction that tend to be satisfiable or tend to be satisfied by new technologies. So the first is to be all-knowing, is omniscience. So this fantasy is about looking into crystal balls and knowing the future or knowing what's happening in someplace else. I created this single pixel browser about 10 years ago called the Ambient orb, and it could glow any color of the rainbow in response to some data feed. And people would use it for things like tracking what the weather was going to be tomorrow, or the pollen count if you have allergies, or the wind speed if you like sailing or kite flying, or the first derivative of barometric pressure, which is the likelihood that the fish are going to be biting right now, or whether your garden needs watering. So all of these are online data that you just sort of want to glance at. You don't want to have to go to an app and get the information, but you just want to know like this, like out in your peripheral vision without even thinking about it. Recently, that company, Ambient Devices, is just focused on the energy market and on demand response, because we found that if you put the price of energy on some object like a glowing thing in people's periphery, they tend to conserve by about 20%. And this device, this new energy jewel that the company is selling, has one side as an orb and the other side as the details, because the energy companies just thought it was too funky to have just color. They wanted a little bit more data, a little bit more. And this is also this energy clock that I showed you in the video, which I think is actually one of my favorite ideas for energy, which is to take an ordinary object of a clock and then show you how you compare with yourself. So this is sort of norming to yourself. It was inspired by, I have a rowing machine. I don't know if people have tried these rowing machines where you can row against your best workout. It's very motivational because you have two little boats and you say, I should be able to beat that guy. Right? Like, that guy's me, so I should be able to get that guy. So this is the same thing. It's norming to yourself. So if you take a graph of the cumulative energy consumption for the day, it sort of shows you whether you're ahead or behind yourself. And it expresses it in data that people can understand, because nobody understands kilowatt hours. Like, what's that? So this is just expressed in hours. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of knowing the mind of another person. I think the fantasy here is Cerebro. Remember Cerebro? He was a mutant. He could go into this chamber and he could see where all the other mutants were, and even some of their recent memories. I think this pop culture comic book icon of Dick Tracy anticipated our interest in, the iWatch, which is coming out in a couple weeks. I can tell you that. And he had FaceTime right there on his watch, in the 50s. And the same sort of knowing where people are, I think, was expressed in this fantasy of the Weasleys in the Harry Potter series, where there's a big family, and how does a mother keep track of 8 kids or 10 kids? Well, if everybody has a hand on the clock, then you can see whether somebody's in bed or on holiday or in the forest or lost or in mortal peril, which is good to know. So the same response to this knowing where your family was this Google Latitude doorbell, where we just made different sound effects as people approached the house, sort of extended the idea of a doorbell. Because plotting people on a map, I think, is too intrusive. And you sort of want to know when people are coming home, but you don't have to text everybody. And this is sort of a nice background or ambient way of understanding that. We talked about the Skype cabinet and kids. So protection, let's talk a little bit about this sort of, I think it's more important, or I would encourage us to think about enchanted objects to help protect us rather than to dominate others, which is the history of military instruments. But if you look at Star Trek from the 70s, this was a fantasy of going anywhere, boldly going where no man had gone before. But right after the Vietnam War, we didn't want to annihilate the natives, right? So we made up this set phasers on stun so that we could, sort of be protected while, and I think this exactly sort of dovetails nicely into today's taser, where you don't want to shoot them, but you want to be safe. There's also this fantasy of a key to the city, or a magic key, or a golden key that gets you into any door. And I think if you've seen this new product from a company called August, this is an enchanted object to sort of map onto the old infrastructure of your lock. So just like the Nest thermostat sort of mapped onto the old infrastructure of your heater or air conditioner, this just sort of goes over the top of your old lock infrastructure and then uses NFC on your phone so you can get into your house without having to touch your lock. But then you can also grant access to like your little brother or somebody on Airbnb, so you can say, they can get into my house, but only for tonight or only for the next week. I think another fantasy of protection is this idea of lurking or being invisible or being all-seeing or all... certainly that keeps you safe if no one knows you're there. And I did a search for teddy bear cameras, and this is sort of the same way of being invisible, having an invisibility cloak, being able to lurk on whoever's taking care of your kids to see what they're doing. And I agree, it's creepy. It's maybe not as creepy as this, though, which is this fantasy that we'll all have surveillance cameras and they'll be on our heads, so that will provide some level of societal security, perhaps, if everything is being photographed. My last startup dealt especially with this fantasy for long life. This is the Fountain of Youth. It's in Florida, and you can go there. I'm joking. I think mirrors provide a good interface for this sort of fantasy of monitoring and diagnosing. We did, for one of the TED conferences, we did a mirror that superimposes your blood pressure trends on your heart and looks at your heartbeats based on your pulse, and it's sort of a nice interface for being reflective about yourself because it's a mirror. The pharmaceutical industry, somebody from is it Sanofi is in the room, and Sanofi has a lot of miracle potions that they sell, but no one ends up taking the medication. So this was Lucy's magic in Narnia was her enchanted object was to have a curing potion. I focused on this problem about 4 years ago by looking at medication packaging and trying to embed wireless technology in packaging. So we came out with this product called the Glow Cap. We made a blister pack for Europe and did a deal with AT&T. So each cap, you can have 10 caps, and each cap connects with a nightlight, which has a cellular modem inside. So it pulses with lights and then makes cute little ringtones, doot, 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 when it's time to take your medication. And we were able to, and you can have multiple meds. And we did a study with Mass General Hospital, and we were able to increase people's adherence from 70% to over 95%, which is really incredible because the pharma company gets 30% more revenue, and the insurance company saves money, and as long as it's the right medication that you're taking, it's good for you too. So here's some of the data of what it looks like before people use a glow cap. The control group, these are days. Each little dot is a day, and each row is a person. And then when you take the other group of people, it looks like this. So green means that at least they opened the cap that day. And I think it worked for a couple of reasons. One was it had a lot of feedback loops. There were both personal reminders, but then there was also social network support. So you'd get an email that went to a loved one that showed whether you did or didn't take your medication. Also, your doctor could be in the loop, and you could automatically get new medications by pressing a little button on the cap that said, "Send me more." So it was a little bit like OnStar for your car.
This is the network, a network of possibilities.
AT&T loves this because there are 3.5 billion caps
In here, video games are
distributed
not confined
every
to screens.
year in the US. So it's a big opportunity for a telco.
In here, medicine talks to you. In here, pets never get lost. It's the AT&T network, and what's possible in here is almost impossible to say.
I sold the company, so I don't care if Orange adopts it, but I think it's a good idea. We're parodied. How many people know the Colbert Report? It's a television show that just makes fun of things in the US, sort of fake news, and we were parodied, and I want to show you that
Remembering
because
to
it's
take
funny.
your pills can be difficult. I have a little mnemonic device I use to remind myself. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday are the days I take my pills. Or it might be nights, I don't remember. Well, the Vitality Corporation has a solution called glow caps. Jim?
Glow caps are internet-connected pill caps that go on regular pill bottles. Now, each day when it's time for Grandpa to take his heart pills, the glow cap pulses with this light. If he doesn't see this light for some reason, the glow cap plays a ringtone, kind of like a cell phone. Now, here's where it really gets cool. If Grandpa misses a pill, the glow cap will call his home phone as a reminder.
This is perfect. Because while old people can be forgetful, they are great when it comes to setting up the internet, recognizing cell phone ringtones, and accessing voicemail messages.
It's good to be made fun of. It's fine. I feel like this fantasy for immortality and this desire for connected health, as I'm sure you've seen, is really cutting across so many segments, not only of people that are ill, but people who are interested in wellness. And some of the few are taking medications, tracking activity, which now you see dozens of devices, food consumption, which I'll show you an example, mood and stress, sleep tracking. What's interesting to note, though, is that there are thousands of apps that will do this for you, but the problem is they don't work because it's too much effort to go in and log that you've taken a medication, right? Like, the only people who are logging whether that they've taken the medication are already really good at taking medications. So it's a perfect example for passive sensing and ambient display of information because it involves very small behavioral changes that can be affected with furniture, with devices, with wearables. Some of those that I'm inspired by, this was at CES this year. It's a fork that notices if you're eating too fast and introduces a little bit of vibration in the fork, so you sort of have palsy if you eat too fast, which I think is sort of funny and brilliant. What's that? No. So this is a stress watch that uses galvanic skin response. This was a mock-up in order to change the background of your watch to show you whether you're stressed, whether you're lava stressed or blue mellow out cool right now. This is a soft scale that has embedded LEDs in it that give you a sense of what your trend line is for weight. These are little stickers that have accelerometers inside that you can put on musical instruments and toothbrushes and wallets in order to track how much you're using those things. This is one of my favorite ideas. We haven't built it yet, but this is just a sketch. But it combines being able to have a 360-degree camera that's inside of something that's already on your table, a salt shaker, and a little pico projector so that you can take a picture of what someone's eating, you can source it out to India or wherever, to a nutritionist someplace else, and then reproject adjacent to the food information about the food. Like, don't finish the foie gras, or not any more of that cheese, or whatever, or the salmon came all the way from Norway, or whatever it is. So let's talk about the last two fantasies. These are fun. So the fantasy, you have this beautiful Pegasus statue or flying carpets are all about effortless travel. Now, what can technology bring to travel? I can tell you it can bring a lot. The fantasy from the 50s, Ford Motor Company actually seriously studied the feasibility of flying cars. We don't have flying cars today. We do have cars that fold. This is a Media Lab project that involves a car where you walk out of the front. It's all electric. It charges automatically. They can be sort of stowed like velib, like bikes, so you can get them out of a port. And they, like a smart car, it takes up very little space. It's being deployed now in Spain. The Marauders map is also about sort of where people are in space and travel. It showed you where everyone was at Weasley's at the castle. A lot of, I think you're way ahead of the US in terms of what JCDecaux and some other companies are doing with tracking public transportation. But it's one of the biggest reasons why people don't take the bus is because it's just too painful to stand there and know nothing about whether the bus is coming. We mocked up this, at Ambient Devices, we mocked up a bus pole that you could actually see from some distance. Because once you're at the bus pole, it's sort of like too late to go shopping or talk to a neighbor or slow yourself down on the way in, on the way to the bus. But if you can see it like a big stalk, 8 feet high, 9 feet high from a block away, you can sort of pace yourself and just step right on the bus when the bus arrives. So lastly, we sort of started talking about expression with Brancusi. There are lots of tools, lots of enchanted objects that help us to manifest our creative instincts and be expressive. And I was at the Louvre and watched all the crazy people taking pictures of the Mona Lisa earlier this week. But you think about how long it took to mix those oil paints. Here's a vision for a much easier way to sample the world and then be expressive and paint. That's pretty fun. It's very like just using the world as a reference or a sample and remixing in a very dynamic way. Now, I think that makes painting easier if you can just sample the world and start painting. I'm really interested in this history of music making and what you could do to make music making less painful. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she's learning cello right now. Oh my gosh. Cello is really hard to listen to as a parent for a full year of. I mean, the cello doesn't have any frets at all. It doesn't help you, land on the right note. It's hard. But frets came along and made guitars much easier than cellos and violins. And I'm really interested in these experiences or these objects that could make music making more rewarding more quickly. I was involved in the creation of this product, Guitar Hero and Rock Band, and that was the philosophy there, was to try to invert the learning curve so you could feel some mastery right away. So you could, you were almost just tapping out the beat, and then you could get in front of a virtual audience and have this sort of rush of the crowd and feel some satisfaction. And then you sort of work your way into proficiency over time. So rather than it being painful for a full year at cello, it's sort of fun in the first 30 seconds, and then you just get better and better and better over time. And I think there's a big opportunity here for objects of enchantment that allow you to be more expressive. I'm very interested in my last example, in thinking about photography and the new ways that wearable cameras, not just on glasses, will change the way that we record our lives and log our lives. This is a Kickstarter project from a company based in Sweden called Memoto that is a wearable clip that you wear, and then it just takes high-res photos every 30 seconds. So I don't know if people will wear it, but I'm sort of intrigued with but I know you won't look at all the pictures. But I know that the pictures will reveal a lot. They will reveal who your friends are, who's looking at you when you talk to them. They reveal what you eat, how much time you spend on Facebook. This is a really interesting sampling of your own life if you had a technology that could actually do the interpretation of the images. So about 9 months ago, I started a new company called Ditto, and we're just doing that machine vision task of being able to look at photos that are shared on social networks and be able to find who are the people, what are their expressions, what are the brands that are in those photos, and I'll show you a little video about how that works.
Face it, you're a trendsetter, an influencer. You post photos all the time. Ditto is a new service that makes it easier for your friends to enjoy what you love. Say you're out to lunch, got a new pair of shoes, are at a ball game, or adopt a puppy. All you do is post a photo as you usually would, and Ditto's technology recognizes key features of your photo. Say you try a new Panera Mediterranean sandwich. Your friend clicks on your Ditto and gets a free treat with any purchase by Panera. When you post your new camper shoes, your buddy is able to find a pair he likes by Ditto directing him to browse more shoes. When your neighbor sees your Red Sox game photo, he clicks Add to Wish List and puts going to the next home game on his calendar. Ditto also makes it easy for your friends to support the causes you care about. And now you can see a new side of your friends, with a compelling new way to organize their tagged photos and the resulting wish list that these tags inspire. Start using Ditto now. Fun is contagious.
So this doesn't sound like an object. I guess the object is the camera and how to make the camera experience much more connected. But I think the ramifications are really for advertising, because as we know, we look at our friends' photos on social media and we notice things like shoes and vacation places and where they ate, and we become inspired to do those things, so much more inspired than Google ads. Do people actually click on those? I know it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, but it's so uninspiring in terms of how people are being inspired by the passion of their own friends. So I'm excited about this as a way to take any photo and then start adding links on the photo itself. There's another company called Stipple, which is in New York, that's doing this manually. And they've reported about 10x more click-through rates on links that are on photos rather than links in the sidebar. But of course, you can't, if there are 500 million photos that are shared every day on social media, you can't make it a manual process. It has to be automatic, which is what we're working on. Okay, so to finish up, I really have a fight to pick with the convergence objects of Android phones and iPhones. And I just want to tell you in 12 fast examples that touch part of what I've spoken about already, what are the sort of unique abilities that tangible things have over iThings? So the one that we talked about was glanceability. If you have an app that's buried someplace on your iPhone, you're just not going to see the data. Another one is wearability, like Nike Plus. Another one is usability. One of the customers that was using the Glow Cap said, I have to open it to get my medication out anyway. And I thought, that's great. It's an everyday gesture that you're going to do anyway, or hopefully you're going to do anyway. And that's the place to put the sensor and the representation is right in the everyday gesture. Another one is like Nabistag, which was invented here in Paris, the sort of lovability, this idea of neoteny, that you can have cute characteristics that will somehow sort of tap into your own emotional vulnerabilities. Another one is tangibility, like the chair that you can lay, as you lay back, it plays the right music for you. Another one is learnability, like when I installed one of the Skype cabinets in my parents' kitchen to talk to my kids, she said, how do I use it? I hate Skype because you have to do this and this. And I said, you open a cabinet. Like that, and so she was very happy with the sort of extreme learnability. Another one is expressibility. When Rock Band started, they were doing a game controller app. So they were working with Sony, and it was similar to where the music's coming towards you, but you were working with a game controller, and it was very hard to like jam with a game controller, right? But you have to have the tangibility of like something that feels like a guitar, feels like a drum set, in order to have that feeling of expressibility. It has to sort of fit the form of your body. Another one is gesturability, which is sort of unique to these. Another one, this is a company called Proteus that's actually embedding things on pills, which I actually hate the idea of, but I think you can't ingest the phone, but you could ingest an enchanted object. Another one is affordability. One of the last projects before selling Vitality that I did was to make a credit card that had a pedometer inside. It had an accelerometer. So it would charge up your card if you would walk more. So your employer would pay for you to be healthier, and they would pay in terms of these objects. So I think the business model is really wide open, especially if you can influence behavior. Like Novartis was giving out glow caps because people took their immunosuppressants so that they didn't reject their liver. They were more likely to take those medications. So as soon as you can incite some sort of behavior change, then you can start just giving these things away, like Amazon should be doing with Kindles. Another one is sociability. This is another Media Lab spinout that you may know called Siftio, that makes these little siftable screens that you can put together, and their adjacency creates new play patterns, new ways of playing. And then you can have a lot of people gathering around, which is very hard to do with a game that's on a phone. And the last one is smokeability, and it's very hard to do that with phones. So do you know this company, Blue, that when you smoke these cigarettes, they have wireless chips in them, and they communicate out to your friends to say he's taking a smoking break, so they're inherently social. So you should think of these as not as enchanted objects. These are cloud objects. These are all connected to the cloud in some way that's useful and expressive and changes people's life for the better. So I hope you've enjoyed the short presentation about 4 futures that you can choose between. I recommend enchanted objects, 6 different drives, human drives, psychological drives, that tend to be satisfied, that could help prioritize what you spend time on building, and the 12 special abilities that enchantment possess. And if none of those convince you, McKinsey says it's going to be a $2.7 trillion opportunity. So there you go. Thank you very much.